Good morning, kindergarten. It is Wednesday. Can you see the number 22? April 22nd. And when I got up, the sun was shining as I hung my flag out this morning. But now I notice it's partly cloudy. So whenever you watch this, you look outside and see what is it doing outside. Did you see the snowflakes falling yesterday? Yep, it's almost the end of April. Proves that we live in Michigan and anything can happen. All right, Wednesday, April 22nd. It's our 145th day. And in honor of the snowflakes that flew yesterday, we'll put a white puffball in with Mr. Fox. And for parents that are watching the bottom of our papers, they would say 145 for our lesson today. All right. I got a later start today. I got up super early to do a couple of things, and I went upstairs and took my shower, and then I started cleaning, and I lost all track of time. But my bathroom is clean. Do you have any chores that you've been working on, helping your mom do while we've been off school? Have you learned how to do something new? Oh, it's always fun to have helpers at school, at home. So what kind of things are you doing to help your mommy at home? I hope you're being a good helper. Let's practice our verse this morning. Wednesday. Can you say it? Philippians 4, 4 through 8. And we're working on verse 6 and 7 right now. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again I say rejoice. Let your moderation, remember your self-control, how you conduct yourself, be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. Be careful for nothing. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication. But in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. Let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts, and minds through Christ Jesus. Good job. Philippians 4, 4 through 8. Next week we'll add all the list of things we should think on. Think about the good things and not the bad. Think about the happy and not the sad. Don't think about what you've lost. Think about what you've won. Think about the good things that God has done. You know who I think about when we say those verses and when we sing that song? Paul. Remember, a man who hated God, and he arrested, and then they were put to death. Christians, people who followed Christ. But remember yesterday's story? God saw him, and he saw him in his hate and his sin, and he stopped him on the road to Damascus, and he got Saul's attention. And it changed his life. And God gave him a new heart and a new love. And to remember, he gave him a new name, Paul. And Paul traveled all around telling all kinds of people about God's love and what he did for Paul's heart. Now, this morning I found a really neat map. And it shows you all the places that Paul traveled. Remember, Mrs. Taggerby called him a missionary. Now, we're all missionaries, but some people travel all around the country or all around the world telling people about Jesus. Boys and girls, you can travel around your neighborhood. You can travel around our city and tell people about Jesus. Show people there is something different and then tell them. Well, Paul did that. And he had some different people that traveled with him. Remember yesterday who was in prison with him? Silas. And remember, did they complain and whine and fuss? No, they sang praises and they were thankful, even though they had been beaten, even though it was cold and dark and nasty in that prison. And God heard them. He heard their praises. He heard the prayers of the people that were worried about them. And remember, God sent an earthquake. And that shaking loosed their chains and their stocks, and it opened the prison door. And the jailer got very, very afraid. And Paul said, "It's okay. Don't worry. We're still here. Nobody left." And because Paul did right, he had a good attitude, his heart was right, God gave him an opportunity to share that good news with the jailer and with all the house. And remember, in our story, the Bible tells us that the Philippian jailer, he got saved and his whole family trusted in God. Isn't that wonderful? Boys and girls, you never know what circumstance God will use in your life, and you need to be watching. You need to be ready, and you need to be willing. And Paul was willing. Do you know what? There are a lot of people who didn't like Paul. They remembered what he used to be. They didn't like him at all. And Paul said, wait a minute, the things that I used to do, I don't do them anymore. And there's a song about that. Maybe you've heard it. The things I used to do, don't do them anymore. The things I used to do, don't do them anymore. The things I used to do, I don't do them anymore. There's been a great change since I've been born again. There's been a great, great change since I've been born. There's been a great, great change since I've been born. There's been a great, great change since I've been born. There's been a great change since I've been born again. Do you know what? Paul told everybody, everywhere he went. But there were some people that they remembered. They remembered Saul. They remembered what he did, and they weren't sure that they liked him, that they trusted him. And they watched Paul. And they saw that he did the same thing. He said the same words. His actions matched his words. Boys and girls, when our actions don't match what we say, if you tell mommy, I love you, and then you stomp your feet and throw a fit, is that loving? No. You tell your brother, I love you, and then you punch him because you want the toy he took from you, or you wanted the bigger cookie. Boys and girls, if your actions don't match your words, people aren't going to believe you. And so people watched Paul. They saw what he was doing, and they heard, and they realized, yeah, he's not the same person he was. And God used Paul all over many, many cities, many, many countries to tell people the truth, that Jesus is the only way to heaven. And you know what? People hated Paul. There were people who did not like him. You see, he had some different people who chose to follow God, and it meant that it took away money from people. There was a lady who would sell purple, Lydia, the seller of purple. There was another lady who did bad things for money, and she told people's fortunes, and she made different people lots of money. Well, when she turned and followed the one true God, she didn't make that kind of money anymore. And it made people mad, and they started talking, and they started going up against Paul. And down through the different towns, Paul was arrested several times, and he was beaten and thrown in prison. That's what happened in Philippi, with the Philippian jailer. And people were angry at him. Boys and girls, people don't like when their life gets disrupted. Kind of like what we do right now. We don't like that we have to stay home all the time. But you know what? God has a plan. It might be a little plan, but it might be a great big plan. Are you willing to listen and learn from what God brings into your life? Paul did. Paul had some different scary things that happened to him, and yet he trusted God no matter what. Are you willing to trust God no matter what? Are you willing to be a testimony to others around you? Boys and girls, people are watching us. They're watching what we say and what we do. What are you telling them? Paul told a whole different story. The things he used to do, he didn't do them anymore. Jesus made a change in his heart and his life, and God used him for a lot of years to tell other people about that change.